There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Jelinek, and I have won the mother-in-law lottery. Robin Jelinek is my mother-in-law. I've been married to her son, Brad, her older son, for 13 years. And I'm really excited to get to sit down and interview Robin today. For this interview, where we'll hear a little bit more about Robin's early beginnings and background, her Kundalini experience, and even hear a little more about the Kundalini experience that I think she's probably shared anywhere else yet. And then dig into things that are unfolding now, offerings that are available in 2025, and the mission of the group and how that's evolved. So I'm really excited to get to do this. My I'm here because part of the thing I get to do in the world for work is actually do interviews, mostly with entrepreneurs to help them create their books. But today doing this one with Robin is extra special. So thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that.
Yes, I do too. I'm excited to be here. So let's talk about your story, Robin. In the very beginning, when you were young, did you have any feelings about this? When was the first time you felt this pulse?
Yeah. Well, this is kind of funny for the people that are watching right now. We're doing this for the second time because we forgot to put the recording on, but I just feel it's going to be better this time for some reason.
Yay! Yes.
Now that you've asked that question, I'm kind of thinking back to in my early years when I met my husband now. I remember thinking all the time about tennis. And at that time, I didn't have any children, of course. I was just young myself. I had no friends that played tennis. I had no reason to be interested in tennis, but yet tennis was on my mind as a big thing. And I would drag Dave, my husband now, down to the tennis courts, and I would hit the ball and it would go over the fence, and I would be so frustrated. And he would tell me that I had to not hit it so hard. And I could feel something in my body that knew that I could play tennis. But why that was, I don't know. And then years later, of course, in my early 40s, when we sold our business, we were going back and forth to Naples, Florida, and a big part of our life became tennis. I became a very good tennis player. I took lessons for over 20 years. We both did. We competed a lot in all different levels until we got to a pretty good level of tennis. And I often went back to that remembrance or that thought about how did I know that? Or why at that young age, 12 or 13 years old, why was I thinking about tennis? And then that went on, even when I had my children, I made sure they had tennis lessons and I would watch them and long for having a tennis racket and the time to play. Of course, we were working in our business and I just didn't have time for it. I was just taking them into play. But now as I look back, and this is something I'm kind of glad we're doing this over second, Catherine, because I'm realizing that as I've gotten older, I'm able to look back over my life and actually start to see the links or the things that led to the next thing and the next thing, where at the time they meant nothing. They didn't seem like a big deal. And once you start to get that kind of recognition, you start to look out for those links. You start to imagine what's next, or I don't really want to miss that. But in the beginning, you don't know they're there, so you're not really noticing them. So you end up having that looking back type of feeling that you get. So I've had those things happen periodically over my life, and now that I've gotten deeper into this, and it's what I do for work, what I'm really becoming aware of is that there are multiple aspects of us that are expressing at the same time. So there are universes upon universes based upon the probabilities and possibilities of what we are living. And so those actually exist. And once in a while, what you would call deja vu, or what happened to me in tennis, is actually happening in another timeline or somewhere, and it's being experienced, and you're in a place or point where you can feel it, where you're connective to it. And then, of course, it wasn't until I was 42 or 43 years old where I actually acted on it, where I actually became a tennis player. But I think it's quite interesting that a tennis player actually existed. I just didn't know it at the time.
So can I ask a question? Are you saying then on the dimension where you were already in your 40s and playing tennis, there's something about your younger self that could feel that?
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
what the knowing is actually? Because you
Yes.
have had knowings throughout your entire life. You knew about Dave, you
Yeah.
knew about channeling, you knew there was so many layers of knowings.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
the
quite honestly, the reason I'm bringing this up is who hasn't? I'm not special.
right.
I'm not getting something that everyone else isn't getting. I'm just starting to figure out what was really happening. And anyone can do this as they start to look at their knowings
Well, this is exciting.
or the things that they feel. It's just like I had a few friends that I would meet and I would just feel the connectedness. I would just feel that they were part of my experience, even though I had just met them. Yeah. So that's kind of what I discovered along the way, and that's how I kind of knew that my husband was going to be my husband when I was only a very young age. I think we've told the story before that he walked in the room, and I had this knowingness that there's your husband. Now take a good look at him at a very young age, just in junior high. It was. And I didn't, at that age, and even the tennis thing, I didn't know what it was. I didn't think it was anything special. I didn't think it was channeling. And in some sense, maybe none of it's channeling. Maybe all of it is just recognizing or realizing things that, for whatever reason, we get covered up in our experience and are not able to see these things. And now, as I have recognized them, it gets easier and easier to start seeing things a little bit more clearly and a little bit sooner than maybe what I might have prior to that.
You're just peeling back the layers to what always is and was.
Yeah,
And we think it's something else dropping in, but it's just rubbing
yeah.
off the gunk and getting clear to the picture that was there.
Yeah, yeah. So, getting back to the question at hand, the Kundalini awakening and all those kinds of things. And then now again, where did that interest come from in my early 20s? Nobody in my family had gone really to church. Nobody was interested in spirituality, but yet it was dropping in. I was being drawn to all these books. I was studying all this material from my early 20s, even before I had children. Was on the path and very excited about it. And so I think that again, that was perceiving. That was more of like a deja vu thing, something in the future, or that would probably be unfolding, of which that would be a part of. The more that you do this work, the more that you know, the more material that you study, the better you get at it, because in order for that stream of consciousness to gain access to you, having a little bit of an understanding or a background is a useful tool. I always remember when I read Sylvia Browne's book, one of the things that her group told her to do right away was to study every religion that she could and to gain as much understanding about things as she could, because that was going to serve her in her practice. And that's what she really did for years. She was very knowledgeable on just about every religion, and could talk to anyone at great length on any topic to do with that. And, for me, the Kundalini energy, having that experience myself is what really pushed me in a direction of study, of wanting to understand what had happened to me, of wanting to know more. And then as years went on, and I did become a channel, that has become a big part of my practice or what I do. And so it's kind of funny, when you look back on it, you think, well, did the Kundalini rising cause the channeling, or was this already part of the plan, of what I would actually be doing in the
That's
channeling?
the question that's coming up for me is like, are we creating that or is it just always, always, always there?
Yeah, well, here's the good answer. Everyone always talks about heaven being up there and on earth being down there, and that when they leave here and go there, it's going to be better than it is down here. What I've learned is you're not going anywhere, really. That this is an interactive experience that you're having. That the what you call the universe or heaven or whatever you're comfortable with, God, and then you as a human, you're in this together. This is an interactive experience that's going on between that aspect of you. And so once you kind of get that understanding, you realize that none of it is separate, and that you have access to all of it. And the more that this starts to unravel and the more understanding that you get about yourself and about others, the better you are getting at perceiving things. So getting back to that Kundalini experience, I used to say, I don't know if the energy was chasing me or I was chasing it. So I was well aware of it. I knew that the practice could precipitate state, that awakening. But I also have learned that people who are on a spiritual journey already have a stirring of Kundalini energy. It's what creates that passion, that desire, that wanting to know more, and that wanting to be in spiritual partnership with someone. That is coming from Kundalini energy. That is the energy of creation. The divine feminine is the energy of creation. And so without that energy already stirring within you, you would have no desire. You would not
It's the
be,
magnet that's
yeah,
pulling itself to
yeah,
itself.
it's the thing that's driving the thing. And so so knowing that, then looking back now, I would say I started to do the practice because she called me to it. That's what actually happened. I didn't know that at the time. I thought the practice called her to me, but that's not actually how it works. It's the energy calls you to the practice that will assist her in rising up the spine. And so, once I started doing that practice, I did some focused breathing, not the rapid, hard stuff. I would just lay down at night before I would go to bed and breathe into each one of my energy centers and imagine that I was conducting light. I was actually telling that center to open, and I was drawing the light in through my intent and through my will. Because what happens is when we have a lot of life experiences that clog up our energy centers or cause them to slow down, there's a rapid spin to those centers. And when they slow down, they stop conducting energy. And therefore, our satisfaction level in those areas of our life that are representative by each one of those centers, it drops. And so we might not be satisfied in our relationships if we have a lot of negative experiences in the heart center. We may have a lot of problems in communication if we've had some issues with the throat center. And so each one of the energy centers is representative of an area of our life. And then as that energy center holds some negativity, the universe starts to flash experiences that are going to represent what you're holding. And the reason that it does that is because it really wants to unload to you what it has created by that energy, which is something quite nice. And so here we are again at, I unconditionally love you, and I'm at your door. I'm trying to send to you what it is that I have made for you by your suffering, by what you've gone through. And I have no other alternative other than to continue to make you suffer, for you to release that energy and for you to let go of it. And so, but us as a human in the suffering, in the unconscious state that we're in, we don't realize that this isn't real. We think that there's an outside cause. We think that something outside of us is making us frustrated, angry, irritated. And so we blame. And so what does the universe do in that case? It expands the energy. She's not getting it.
Oh, it's so hard.
Let's make her suffer a little bit more because she's thinking that they're the cause. She's not realizing she's the creator of everything that is coming to her in her life in the way that it's making her feel.
Ugh.
She's the one that gets to do it. And she thinks that someone else is the cause. So then it intensifies the field, the center slows down. I get more and more pissed off and irritated and frustrated and more looking at the cause, thinking that there's got to be somebody else because I don't want to take responsibility for the crappy experience that I'm having. And, so there's this process that goes on. But, once someone expands consciousness, it's kind of like blowing up a balloon. It never goes back down to the size that it was. So once you've been told this, once you start to grasp this, it's not that you won't ping pong back and forth and fall into the trap once in a while, but there becomes this awareness. And through awareness is the divine aspect of you. The awakeness and awareness is that high energy source of you that has the ability to come in and actually assist you in releasing the thing that you think that someone else is the cause of.
Yeah.
So it's not you as a human in your unconscious state have not one chance in hell at making yourself feel better. The only way that you're going to feel better is to take accountability for yourself and to bring in that I am presence. I used to hear that too. That was like self-love. What the hell is I am presence? The I am presence means I am presently awake to how I am creating in my experience. I don't think it's someone else. I don't like how it feels. I don't feel good right now, but I am claiming this anger and this frustration. And in that I am presence, the divinity part of us gets access through the chakra to actually dissipate the energy and start to remove some of that negativity from the field. We're kind of a long way off of Kundalini. Well, not
It
really.
is perfectly okay. This is a practice that's really helped me in the past week. And
Mhm.
I think what you just said is actually really important to own. this because just like I've known for at least a decade about this. You're creating your own experiences, and how long and kind of gnarly and not glamorous of a road it is
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
really get it. Like, and I'm still not totally there. Like, we can all
Well,
go unconscious and feel like it's the situation and lash
yeah,
back to it. But what you've really just recently introduced with, I am overwhelmed. I
yeah.
am angry. Like it sounds so basic. And I almost was like, no, I'm supposed to like train myself into thinking I'm feeling something else.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that just doesn't work. But in the multi-universe, if you look at it that way, then you would realize at some point there's a realization that everything I have felt is serving me. Everything that has gone out of me is creating a solution for me, is actually going to bring me something in the way that it's going to make me feel that I'm going to like the feel of. So the next stages of mastery are when one can. Sometimes you can't because you're too activated or in an unconscious state. But if you catch yourself at a moment where you're really being accountable and you're really owning your I am presence, you can actually reach out on the timeline, if you will. You could call it a timeline. Everything exists all at once at one time in your life. And so we have, there's no past and present, a future, sorry, there's the present moment, no past and no future necessarily, but there is something that is created in every moment that exists, and that is also an expanded version of you. So there's not just you that suffered through a moment, and let's talk about that for a moment, because a lot of people don't realize that when you're in the now moment, you're consciously aware. You're in that moment, and then when someone comes along and stimulates you, you move to an unconscious state, but you don't realize that you've actually picked up your drawers and you've left your present moment and you've moved on your timeline to a wounded aspect of yourself, and you start creating from that place or point. And sometimes it can be a 5 or an 8-year-old, and this is how we get an adult person behaving as what we would call a child or ridiculous sometimes. But to get the understanding of a self-awareness or the understanding of self-observation is, I recognize when I don't feel good that I have left my present moment in my timeline, and I have moved to the wounded moment, which has called me there for healing. So we're not necessarily stupid humans that are going back to a bad place or time in our thought patterns. We are a human who is being assisted by the divinity part of ourselves to look at an aspect that is still creative in our experience at an earlier age. And this is an opportunity for us to heal that, to collapse that into the present moment and start to gain more and more power over our creation in our lives, if you could understand that. And so to take the concept a little bit further, there would be a higher version, of what we would call a higher version, or one that would be preferred based upon what we have suffered through. And so we also have that option of leaving the present moment and collapsing that moment, that expanded version of ourselves, bringing that into the present moment and experiencing ourselves at a much higher or expanded view. And both of those things exist.
question then. So to just reiterate and make sure I'm understanding it correctly, when I go unconscious and I get stuck in my overwhelm loop and I'm not in my I am presence because I'm taking a dimensional shift into the stuck past.
Yes. Yeah.
Therefore, I'm not in the present. I'm actually visiting 8-year-old Catherine.
And rather than calling it the past, because there really isn't
Sure.
necessarily past and a future, if you were to imagine that your life was like a sidewalk and that every single moment that you have stepped on that sidewalk is existing. It's there. And so we're like a computer in some sense. And so if someone pokes you in a certain way, and if there's something on your sidewalk of a lower tone that matches that tone, you're going to leave and create from there. That's where you're actually called to. And the reason you're called there is because the divinity aspect of you is assisting you. It's saying, okay, you've left my will, you're unconscious, and this is where you've gone. You've gone to this emotive state, and this is where it was created, 8, 9, 5, whatever it might.
Because you're supposed to help release it from that place.
Yeah, but you do that through awakeness. And so people say, well, how do I know I've left the present moment? You don't feel good. You don't feel good. Whenever you don't feel good, you're unconscious. You're creating from a wound or
Yeah.
traumatic past event, whether it's a past life or one that you presently live, doesn't really matter. So our cue is when I don't feel good. And so now, and so what does a human do? They don't feel good, and then they condemn and judge, and they make that emotion bigger instead of recognizing the only reason you're being called out is to heal. That's why you're being called out. You're not being called out because you're a bad human or you're being judged or that there was something wrong about you. You're being called out because there's an aspect of you that's still creating in a lower tone that's preventing flow from reaching you. And so you're getting called out to get a view of that. That's what's actually occurring.
And then if we employ this I am practice, like claiming I am overwhelmed, it actually helps unleash the grasp, right? Is
Yeah,
that what's occurring?
because the minute that you recognize or you go to awakeness, you're going to move back out of that emotion into the present moment. You're going to feel better right
Yeah.
away. You've
Yeah.
done it, you know.
I
Uh,
have.
right away, you're going to feel some relief. And what is relief? People don't realize what these things are. Relief is more energy coming in. It's you allowing your energy back into your field. That's what relief
Oh,
is.
good stuff.
And
Yeah.
so the moment you allow that to happen, there's this uplifted feeling, this relief feeling that comes over you. But that's really just you allowing your flow back in. That's what's actually occurring. And so, this has been really valuable for me to realize that when I told you the universal part of you and the human part of you, they're working together in behalf of each other. They're trying to assist each other in getting a preferred life or one that you like the feel of, one that's satisfying in all areas.
Yeah.
Some people think that they've come here to suffer. Nobody's come here to suffer. Anyone that's suffering is in an unconscious, wounded, traumatic state and has no idea that they are reproducing that same result over and over. Nobody wants that. Nobody deserves that.
Yeah.
So it's to get this understanding that the whole package is when I'm in the present moment and I become stimulated, my divine partner, my I am presence, is trying to pull me, my consciousness, to heal this part of me so that it may get its flow back to me. And the moment
Yes.
I do that in the I am presence, relief comes.
Yes. And I've felt it.
Yeah,
And then you're also saying, so say you feel that relief and release in that claiming of that, you can shimmy yourself back to you're in the present.
yeah.
And there's also the opportunity to reach forward, even
Yeah.
though there's no
And how would
forward.
you reach forward? You would guide yourself in a way that the human accepted. You might think in your I am presence, I wonder what was received from me in the divinity part of me by what I just went through. I wonder what I'm preferring to feel
Yeah.
because of what I felt. Now, if there's any resistance there, you want to get off that horse right away because that just is expanding energy again in an opposite direction.
Oh,
So you
okay.
have to kind of feel yourself and whether you're ready for that. And if you're not, then you just go back to the place that you were and you wait for the opportune moment for the awakeness to be accepted or the energy to be accepted before you try to drive anything. You're not trying to drive anything in that's not flowing. Let's use that description.
And then so say you do feel a good moment,
Mhm.
feeling you're kind of creating, projecting. We know this. And you're
Yeah,
also, let's tie it back to what we talked about already with the knowings, right?
yeah.
And so say like I'm sitting here and I am like, oh, there is something I know, and that could be possible, and I'm feeling it, it feels so good. And then you obviously have to let it go. And as a human, can't try to control or create or make.
I think it's important to remember that you're not looking for an experience. You're not looking for a person. You're looking for a feeling. And the universe, when it creates something for you, it's not just using you in the small individual life that you're living. It has the culmination of the all of you. It has every life you've ever lived. It has your lineage. So it has this full package of data, if you will, of you. And
Yes.
so when it creates a connective experience, it's going to be so far greater than what you could imagine
Yeah.
for yourself in the puny little life that you're living. And so, and it actually is resistive. That can actually cause some resistance. So it is to expand the feeling that you want to feel and let go of the thing or the experience that you think you need to feel it. Because if you
Yeah.
hold that, you can actually create some resistance because the universe is going to let you know right away. I'm the one creating the experiences for you. You're the one feeling the experience for me. And so
Sure.
once you've felt your experience, it's received you, and now it goes about its way through that huge network that it has that connects it to all things, to all beings, to all places. And then it will cultivate the experiences that it would flow right to you, provided that you were not dug in some way, thinking that you are the one. Why does a human start to feel frustrated and irritated when something doesn't come? Because they're trying to make something happen. They're trying to do something outside of what they're designed to do. The universe knows you. It's felt you the moment that you've had your expression go out. And so you have to remember that it's not about any things out here. It's not about any other people. It's about you either coming closer to that divine creation that's been made by everything you felt, or you are moving away from it. And that's all it's about.
Wow. And just to, I'm hearing it's about the essence, not the form.
Yes.
Like my job is about the essence, not the form. The universe gets to bring a beautiful form that I wouldn't have expected. And that's kind of part of the fun of the game, right?
Absolutely. And the more I get into this, the more I realize that the universe has got a sense of humor. And
Yeah, it does.
times, earlier recordings, I think you remember maybe Jeremiah saying the bullwhip. They would talk
Yeah.
about, and everyone knows what a bullwhip is like. It comes back and snaps you on the ass when you least expect it. But what's really funny about this is what I'm seeing over and over, not just in my experience, but in a lot of people that I work with, is this bullwhip will come around all the way back to your childhood. And something you were doing back then will come into this big fruition or
Mm.
place in your life. So it's got a sense of humor, and it uses everything. So many people will think that they wasted time, that they were failures at certain things, that they shouldn't have done this, they should have done that instead, and they let this opportunity go. None of it has been lost. All of it is being used. And at that culmination point, you start to begin to see it and realize and recognize that, I really needed absolutely every experience that I got to get me to the satisfying place that I'm in.
Okay. So let's take this back to you.
Yeah. So I'm kind of glad we went this route because, to be quite honest, I've described the Kundalini awakening so many times on interviews, and people are sick to death of hearing it. And if they want to look me up somewhere else, they can certainly find it. It's on in many recordings. And it was your basic bells, whistles, noises, and punctures, all of the things that you feel in a Kundalini awakening. And those are all very, very similar. Some people will have a longer period of the dark night of the soul. I had that for a couple of years. Worked my way through that, eventually recognizing that that energy comes through a human to let them know what is it that I am holding within myself that is actually denying me flow? What is it that I am believing and perceiving that I don't really like in myself or in someone else? It could be. So all of those experiences are going to get lit up. You're going to see
Yeah.
everything that you don't like about yourself. And unfortunately, the dark night of the soul is the hating of oneself, really, and what you see
Oh,
that's denying you connection. And so you cannot get to where you want to get in that energy. So at some point, you have to love yourself for the crappy ways that you have felt and some of the crappy things that you've done. You have
yes.
to surrender to it. And in that surrender, that's a really connective state to the universal part of you when you surrender. And then flow starts coming in. And then the nice changes that we want to see in ourselves are not efforted at all. They're not by you being perfect or you changing anything about yourself.
Right.
They come through your authentic state and your allowing of yourself to be exactly the way that you are. And then you do change. You do become much more satisfied with yourself and in the way that you think and believe. But that doesn't happen as a human controlling or defining what they think perfection is. That's not how it comes.
Do you have to have the dark night of the soul? Is it going to happen in some way, no matter what, if you're going through this experience? And then question is that, does it always happen after the Kundalini has already taken a little wiggle? Or does it sometimes start even before anything physically whirling, any of that shows up?
Yeah. Some people come into their experience with Kundalini that's been activated in a prior lifetime, and they continue that journey from there. And so they can be in what's called the dark night of the soul and not even know it. So they may not have had the Kundalini rise, but I think this was the case with Brad. Actually, we've talked about
Okay.
this. Yeah. And so someone can have a Kundalini activation in a prior lifetime and really be on a spiritual journey and then move to a lot of self-hatred and condemning and suffering in the life they're in and not really understand it because they haven't actually had a full-blown Kundalini awakening. So, and as I told you, I don't know if it was in the recording, we forgot to record or it was
Yeah, it might have been.
but sometimes you just don't remember having the experience, and so you don't understand the suffering. And in answer to your question, that's really what I do in the work that I do is I try to assist people in having the smoothest transition that they can in the release of that energy. So in the understanding that when we move through a session together in each one of the energy centers, we lift off a lot of the major emotional basis that people are holding that actually would tip off or kick off a lot of negativity or experiences that would match what they're holding. So the more of that that is done prior to the actual rise, the smoother that goes for people because they learn to start observing themselves. They learn to start loving themselves and some of the things they've hated. Maybe they were controlling or jealous or angry people. And when they get that reflected back to them in the way that when we ask people, how do you feel about that? They don't like themselves in it. They don't, that's not the love of self. And that's not connected to your source. So in some sense, we have to work at getting them to accept themselves the way that they are, and then start to release some of that energy a little at a time so that when they do get the rise, they won't get that huge kickoff of one experience after another. When someone has a Kundalini awakening and they don't understand what that energy does and the power that it has over them, they don't know how bad it can get. They don't understand how much it would depend on how satisfied they are in all areas of their life. That's the first question that a client gets asked. And the minute that they start unloading areas of their life that they're not satisfied in, then the group moves very quickly to explain to them why they chose to feel the way that they do, and then leads them down the road of loving and accepting themselves in that free will choice. And then they open themselves to the divine flow, which comes in and starts to lift off some of these perceptions and beliefs that they've held against themselves their whole life, and therefore not felt very good, because of it. So the process, I think I needed to have a partial rising. I needed to suffer like that in
Yeah.
order to see how I can actually guide people away from that process. And there are people that have spontaneous awakenings. And the way I look at that is they may be like me. They may be people that need that experience, and they're going to use that in their experience to help other people. So I don't think there's a wrong way that it can happen. I used to look at my way and think, oh, I did it wrong. I had that energy rise up and I never did any self-analysis. But, looking back on it now, I needed that to happen how it did, or I would not be doing the work that I'm doing. So it's not that everybody needs, because it can be very disruptive. I mean, luckily, I was working in our own business. I had control over my time, and so of course, if I was having a bad day or dealing with some energy that I was going through, I had more control. But some people don't. They're in very high pressure jobs, and they need them, and they're out in the working community. So it's everybody doesn't have that luxury. They have to perform. They have to be out working, but yet they still want to pursue their spirituality. So I look at myself more as being the avenue for that, so that they are able to continue at a high level, but yet still be achieving the spiritual evolution that they're looking to have.
Oh, I love that. And we were talking about the other recording that we accidentally didn't hit record on.
Yeah,
Um, you were mentioning how upon even opening your Kundalini, you continue working lifetime after lifetime and expanding it more and more, that the journey it sounds like it just keeps continuing. That even for you, when this started in your 40s,
yeah,
you're talking about recently, it was only like the past year or so,
yeah. Still
where it
going. Yeah,
reached something new happened with Shiva and your crown, and it and you
yeah.
were mentioning even those like Jesus, you know, there's a continued expansion of this life force energy. It's not just like, okay, I rose, I'm out, we're good.
Yeah, yeah. And you've heard me talk about it before, about the grandkids and the love that I
Yeah.
have for them. And in experiencing that, I thought, here I am 60 years old and I'm experiencing a level of love that is above what I have felt before. It's more than what I had even just having my own children. And I remember posing that to the group, that how is this possible? Of course, there was a little bit of a chuckle, and it said, in the expansion of consciousness, there is no end to that. There's so much more that we're not able to perceive as humans in the way that we can feel. And so it's exciting me to know that this expansion of consciousness is one that never ends. It's not like we're ever going to reach a point where we're satisfied and we think that, this is the highest that I can go, or the highest achievement in the way that I can feel. That doesn't exist. This universe is expanding at such a rapid rate, in such a massive size, and there is absolutely no end to the elevated levels of consciousness that we can actually access as long as we keep going with it.
That's so exciting because it sounds like the human race or humanity consciousness is really at a place of taking it a little faster these days. Can you speak now to the group's mission and why they're here now and how their mission has even evolved since they arrived with you? Like what's new? What are they after today? So
Well, I think all channelers have their goals, or their specialties. Maybe that's what you would call it. And, I'm kind of what I would call an activator of activators. Most of the people that I have sessions with are well along on the spiritual path. That's not to say that I'm opposed to someone that isn't. It's just unfolding that way. And they want to serve humanity. They very much want to activate their Kundalini. They want to reach higher and higher states of consciousness. And so that's a goal or priority with most of the people that I meet. And I'm proud to say I think that's happening. I think most of the people that I work with, I don't need to work with them over and over again. I think a good teacher or a good leader, it shows in how often you have to repeat the course. And I don't have to do that often. Most of the people that I see are maybe stuck, and they just need a little bit of a tweak, or something that will push them past something that they're stuck on or hung up on, and then they just go from there. And I feel fortunate that I'm in that position, because it's very satisfying to see the look, or the receiving of what they need, of that thing,
yeah.
what it was, and then they no longer need you. They no longer they've gone now on their own, and they're able to reach the highest potential for themselves by themselves.
Yeah. And I also so appreciate as a repeat student, thankfully, I get to be one in the corner of your family. But you're able to see the simple thing that could unlock a person and then they get to go off. But if you don't have someone to help you with
Yeah,
that nasty, it's kind of like a sour tooth. Like
yeah,
it could
yeah,
just dominate until you take care of it. So
yeah.
you
It
really
can.
do need that.
Yeah. And, those are the times that, sometimes one of the things that's recommended on a spiritual journey, and I know myself, even with the Kundalini activation, because it's so, the consciousness, you're unleashing another consciousness inside of your body alongside of the one that's you. And so now you have this other consciousness that has an idea of how it wants to express. It, of course, wants to include you in it, but now it wants to have influence. It wants to actually work alongside of you in your human experience. And so, that integration process is one that you're, as a human, that's a primary. You came here to express in your human form as the consciousness that you are. And if that Kundalini happens to awaken during the life that you're in, it's very important that you maintain your human relationships and your human exchanges, because if you allow that energy too much space, too much power over you, you'll just sit all day in a corner in a drug-like state, because that's how it feels. It feels like a really high energetic state that once that energy comes in, it can make you feel that way. And there are people actually that do that. They quit living their human experience altogether, and they just sit all day long in this euphoria that's created by that energy. And my group in particular is not an advocate of that. This is the soul aspect of you. It's a universal consciousness that wants to express itself in the most satisfying and highest way that it can, alongside of you in your human experience. And it needs the human tool to do it. It's not going to do it by itself. It's not going to be of any expansion to the universe or without the use of the human for experience. So I think it's important that people recognize that I set time limits. Like if I'm going to sit for a while and allow that energy access, and it does create a lot of kriyas, a lot of involuntary body movements, a lot of lineage healing. Those are things that go on when a person takes sit time that has fully activated Kundalini. I'll say, you're getting 40 minutes and that's it. That's the timer, and when the timer goes off, I'm out. I'm back to my life. But it would be very easy at times before I used to do that to lose hours and not want to stop doing what you're doing. So I think it's important to recognize, what you're actually doing there, that you're bringing someone else into the house that is you. And it's important that you maintain the leadership of your own house when you do that.
Well, it sounds like it's a partnership.
It is, yeah.
Like the energy helps enable a lot of things that the person might desire, vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And oddly, it also illuminates a lot of your humanness or a lot of your perceptions and beliefs, and those do not go easy, and it's very difficult. Even now, I don't like to look at myself channeling because I think it looks nuts. I don't think it looks like Robin, like the Robin I know, and so there's a little bit of a battle that goes on or a discomfort at times when um, you have to start accepting things as normal that most people would not find normal, like my body just moving at will without me doing it, my mouth feeling like someone has their finger in it, pulling it, just lots of different things over time where I've just become accepting of and I don't think a whole lot about. But if I were to really start thinking about it, there's a part of me that thinks, that's kind of nuts. That just doesn't seem like normal or what I would deem as normal. And, I think it's important to mention that, and that's why I kind of understand when some people maybe do think I'm nuts or they can't really understand, what's happened here. And I have to say, sometimes I feel that way. So I can't blame people for not having an understanding of what this like. And unless you actually experience it, it's hard to swallow.
Well, can I give you another perspective on that one?
Yeah.
For me, I so grateful because it's a reminder, the group, is a reminder that things are actually magical.
Yeah,
Like
they
the
are.
world isn't what we were sold, what we were told. And there is a lot more going on, and big, cool, crazy, magical things can happen. Like I am down. You showed up and I'm like, we're putting fairies back in the real bucket. Let's
Yeah,
take all the magic and say, yep, this is
yeah.
totally
Yeah.
possible.
Well, and in that sense, I'm lucky to have you in my life because me, I'm more of a practical, and it's not that I don't believe in those things. They're not necessarily my thing, but I'm not saying that anything doesn't exist anymore based upon what I've experienced through all this
Yeah.
process. But it's nice to have someone like you that's really open to magic and really open to all of the fluffy and fairy like things that are available to people. We're here to enjoy this experience.
Right.
And so
You don't
whatever brings that to you, more power to you.
right. Rather than seeing it as weird and you know,
Mhm.
different. It's just like, wow, this is also here. Look at
Yeah.
that. So, Robin, what's the group's mission? What are they after this year? What's coming up, new offerings for your clients or new expressions of the group?
Right now I do a lot of private sessions and I want to do those because I can see how helpful they are and how quickly it moves people along. I don't know if that's something I'll always be doing. I do the activations, which can go anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's the Kundalini activation. Those I do just on Fridays. And they book out several months or more ahead. I was doing a lot more of those, but I find them to be difficult sometimes. We have to move through a lot of trauma and a lot of heavy things. Let's just use that. And so I started just doing one a day on Fridays, and I do private sessions on a couple of other days a week. And I do group activations. I take 20 people at a time and go through that process and teach them how to observe themselves and lift off negativity that they're holding in their energy centers that's preventative of a Kundalini rise or an activation. And so I find those group sessions, people find them to be really satisfying. And oddly, by the law of attraction, it seems like the 20 people that come in there all are kind of barking around the same issue or, have struggles in the same energy centers. And so it ends up being beneficial to everybody that's there. And so I do that every other month. And I do have some downloadable courses that if people have activated their Kundalini or they have a desire to activate it, those are available on the website and give you a lot of background and understanding of what that feels like to be in that process and what you might notice is going on even before you know it's going on. So there's some of that on there too, and some meditations and different things that kind of gives you. Then I have the Ask Athena thing, which is on the Athena Universe site. That's more of an interactive platform where people don't need a whole session or they can't wait for a session. They can email a question in and get a very detailed response to what it is that they're struggling with. So I have kind of and there's a lot of automatic writing from the Shiva energy that comes out on the Athena Universe that's part of that membership that I think is some of the best channeling work that I do. I think it's way better than even my verbal channeling. I'm told that I can channel him verbally, but as of yet, I don't do it very often. And that's the thing even with the channeling experience, it's all about what you can believe, what you can perceive, what you can hold, what you're ready for. And some people think that becoming a channel, that somebody's special or that they've done something that somebody else can't do. That's just really not true. Being a channel is something that you love, and what does anyone do in their profession? They want to get better at it. They want to read about it. They want to watch people that are doing it. And if you find yourself doing this with channelers, you probably become one. That's what happened to me. So it's just another creation. It's another expression of a satisfying experience that fits the person that's really wanting to do it. So I think I'm a good example of that. And I think people like to hear or get the understanding that this is an attainable experience for someone that really wants to have it. They can have it. And I'm just a regular person. I didn't think that this is what I'd be doing in my 60s. I am a person that liked to help people, and it's very satisfying to me. And I had a friend that was a channeler, and so I was open to it, and I liked watching it. And I think it was just the love of it, just it just fit me in the way that I like to live and feel. And so I just like to leave that out there for people that have that interest and to give them, 90% of creation is just believing in it. It's just giving yourself permission that it's possible. I tell people I'll be in sessions and I'll say, do I have to like pull a tooth out of your mouth to get you to admit that you'd like to be doing what I'm doing? Just say it. What can that hurt? But people are so bottled up with their desires and with their belief in themselves. And I think that's something that I can really help provide people with that more perception of believability, which is huge in creation.
Yes, we need ourselves reflected back to ourselves
Mhm.
sometimes in order to see it. And you can also be channeling even if you're not a channeler, right? Like
Yeah,
people are,
well, there's, actually, I have two ways of channeling going on. A person who has fully activated Kundalini gets access to the divinity aspect of themselves. So you would have access to what you would call an expanded version of yourself, or one that had a lot of wisdom and knowledge and lived many lifetimes. And so people that have fully activated Kundalini oftentimes will be like Tony Robbins. They'll be like Joe Dispenza, and they might be very professional in their work, and they might be doing a lot of the speaking and talking on their own, but they're actually connected into that higher aspect of themselves. And
just
actually
flows.
fully activated Kundalini creates a magnetism within the one that has had that experience. And so you spread very quickly. Your teachings are well received, and you start to expand really fast. And that's because the group that comes through you likes that magnetism because they want to teach. They want to spread to as many people as they can. And so when in the awakening of your Kundalini, you're going to gain access to that divinity part of yourself. And the same kind of flow now comes through me as the same as I would be channeling the group. Normally, when I would have an interview, I'd be at a loss for words or a lot of ums or discomfort. I don't have that anymore because I'm able to tap into that divinity aspect of myself and channel the divine part of Robin, if you will. And everyone has that ability. Anyone can do that. And then because of that release of that energy, I became attractive to a group of teachers and that would be the Athena group, that is a different experience. So when I'm talking right now, even though I tap into the divinity part of myself and the flow is pretty good, I do have awareness of what I'm saying and I can remember and I don't need to listen back to it. When I channel the group, my consciousness steps aside and I have no recall, no remembrance, and I have no idea what it is that they're going to talk about when they in fact come in. So that's kind of the difference between the two things that I have going on. But everybody has access to the divine part of themselves.
Thank you. So you've got to go to a session, and we were
Yes.
a little behind because
Yeah.
because we recorded and didn't
Actually, I
record.
think this is better because I think people just want to know me and they want to
Yeah,
understand, more about the channeling process, more about themselves. Um, and um, and I think this was just a good way to do it. Some of the other material I have out there is a little repetitive, going over. But I would tell you in sessions, everyone is different, and that's why I love private sessions because each one is satisfying in a different kind of way
yeah,
depending on what's uncovered there. So I always look forward to those. And I don't foresee in the immediate future that I'll stop doing private sessions. However, depending on how busy I get in other areas, that would maybe determine how much time I would have for it.
yes, absolutely. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you on so many levels. It's just a gift to have you in my life, and someday I'd love to tell your audience a little more. We could have talked more on those years in between this occurring and you really giving it to others. There was a special year and a half or so where you were really doing it for the family, and there's some fun stories from that time.
There is. Yeah, we'll have to do this again for sure. I'll share this on our YouTube and probably maybe on our website for people that have interest in what really went on here or what goes on. But I would love to have you back on and do that. That would be great.
Cool. All right, Robin, have a great day. Love
You too.
you.
Thank you.